Mr. Mohi, this is very important. I think you should open our meeting for us today. Thank you.
I Hawke huri mātou ki a koe tēnei ata. Mana ke tia I a mātou, a hana mai ana, I te whakarongo ki ngā wanga I roto I te iwi whānui o ngā tika hangunu. Ko te tūmana ko te ngākau, ka taitarangi mairia ki a mātou, a ko te rereke o ngā whakaro ki tētehi ki tēti. O mai taka ki tia o tō mātou tia mana, a Rex, rau ko te tūmoaki, a James, kia whakaarahi a mātou ki runga I tēnei kaupapa. Ko ene mea ka pātai ki runga te ingoa I hukarati ake ake amene.
Kia ora. Okay, lady and gentlemen, because we have so many submitters, it's a very short time frame that we're giving, even less than Fenton had when he was chair, and I thought, how the heck is he going to manage giving each person 10 minutes? And he had to be quite aggressive, which at the time I castigated him for, but now I'm in the hot seat. So he's grinning at me like a Cheshire cat for a good reason. So I think what we should do, and this is just my thought, is we should say to everyone, councillors have read these submissions and go straight to questions if they want. If they don't want to do that and they want to take up their question time, then that's their business, I guess. Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, perhaps they could say, you could ask them, have they got any main points rather than straight questions?
No, that's a very good idea, Mr. Moy. I'll do that. I'll accept that I plagiarise that idea. I often do that to Rick Barker. He doesn't seem to mind. So, if they highlight their main points and then we go straight to, because I'm sure on a lot of these there's a lot of questions.
Chair.
Yes, Debbie.
Are you going to get to conflict of interest declarations before we start?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Because I have one.
Where is my agenda, actually?
But on the agenda, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing
And it marks the 1,200 and something page.
Okay. Before we start the meeting, does anyone have, I mean, we all have conflicts here, I imagine. Does anyone have any really severe conflicts of interest? Debbie, do you?
Yes, I am a trustee of the Cranford Foundation, and so when John Buck's speaking, just be aware that I'm a trustee and I won't be taking part in the voting of that.
Won't be taking part in the voting full stop, or won't be taking part in the voting for what?
For the Cranford.
When it comes to that, not to tomorrow, but the next day.
Yep.
this afternoon.
Okay, and I think that is a very good. Is anyone else a trustee or involved? I haven't thought about that. Any Federated? You a member of Federated Farmers, Debbie?
Member. So that, in my view, is not necessarily a conflict of
I
interest.
don't think so. I don't just
But in
teasing.
Fenton's case, I'd take it as one.
Family push back on make Mr. Barker behind the bike sheds.
If Debbie has declared her conflict, which is great. If when someone's speaking, you think you have additional conflict, you can just raise it at the time, because they may come out as we go.
But the point here is that it's got to be something which is more than you would expect for a person in the general public. And the second thing is that we're not making individual decisions here, we're making decisions as a policy, or public policy rather, or public governance decisions rather than individual decisions. So,
Thank you for that clarification.
be careful, but don't need to be overly cautious.
Okay, there are no do we have to move and second that we are entering into the long-term plan process, do we?
Yes.
Okay. So, we need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations of the long-term plan before we move into this process. Councillor Balford, will you move? move, and councillor Bailey, do you wish to speak about the... Do you wish to speak, councillor?
What, you just pass it off? Got your 19% on.
Does anyone else wish to speak that we have moved to move along to approve the submissions as we have set them down? All those in favour? All right. And we go into submitters will speak. Now, our first submitter is not here still.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just as a notice, my wife's in hospital for some fairly major elective surgeries, so I intend to leave no later than 4 o'clock.
Yeah, oh, thanks for that, Alan. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's right.
We will, hopefully, the agenda says we're out by 4 o'clock, so presume we are. Although,
Good luck.
yeah, I think it will drift a little bit.
But I'd say that Alan goes with our best wishes.
Yeah. I think so too. Anything else we need to cover before we go into this? Okay. Yeah, but our first submitter's not here. So, our first submitter's not here.
Off to a stunning start.
Oh, I think we will go to and to get things done, go to our second submitter, which is Stephen. Stephen Butler, is he here? No?
So I'm gone.
Fred's here. Fred is here. Thank you, Fred. Are you okay to come on early, Fred?
Oh, you bet.
Good on you, mate. So, welcome, Fred. You have 5 minutes. We're not going to press that button until I'm ready to press that button, though. I just want to say that I thought your submission was really well written, and thanks for your persistence in this matter. Now, do you want to speak? You heard me, or do you want to go straight to questions?
I'd like to speak briefly, but I'll chop out a lot so that there are room for questions. But,
Okay.
Yep.
Right, you're on, mate.
Very good. Okay, I applaud the initiative to work with tangata whenua. They have an understanding of water's spiritual nature and treating it with respect. It will be interesting to see how the extra consultation with tangata whenua will sit alongside the fact that this council is handing over absolute power above the council to those very forces of colonisation who have produced such devastating outcomes for the Maori people to date. By being a guarantor, you irrevocably, under the Local Government Funding Agency scheme, you appoint the security trustee to be your attorney with full power over this council to do anything in their opinion is required to protect the interests of the creditors. Contrary to the opinion held by some councillors, this clause is live and active from day one and does not require a default by any party to be invoked. Now I refer to the information prepared for you by your staff regarding the LGFA. Your staff state that 76% of submitters support joining the scheme in some form. What is not made clear is that 63.66% oppose being a guarantor in the scheme. Of more concern are the misleading statements made in paragraph 12, such as staff believe the benefits to ratepayers outweighs the minimal risk in joining the scheme as a guarantor. Let's be very clear. The risk is not minimal except to the creditors of the scheme. Paragraph 12 goes on to state, if we become a guaranteeing council, our share of the guarantee would be 0.37%. That is simply incorrect. Your share of a joint and several liability is 100% of the debt of the LGFA, which currently stands somewhere around $8 billion. The duty imposed upon you as elected councillors by the Local Government Act 2002 is to enable democratic local decision-making by and on behalf of the community. This is effectively voided by being the guarantor because the attorney can veto any decision of this council or impose any requirement on it, and your only option is to say yes. So are there any questions? There appears to be no questions.
No. Pause, Fred. There will be questions
There will be
on
questions.
this matter. Any questions? Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Fred, I was just intrigued by your comment that the guarantee is joint and several.
It is.
It's my understanding that, and maybe staff will at some stage will educate me on this, is that my understanding we were limited to a percentage of the amount of, so if we buy into the guarantee scheme, it's not joint and several, we are limited to the amount that we're actually, that's outstanding or that we're liable for.
The situation is clearly stated in the documentation. It is a joint and several liability. There is a side agreement where if, let's just say, a council defaulted on this thing, and let's just say it was, a couple of $1 million, then there's a side agreement that says the councils will divvy that up depending on their rates take compared to the rates take of the total number of guarantors. And in this case, your percentage of that would be 0.37%. So that is correct. But your liability is 100% under the joint and several liability. So if Auckland put its feet in the air because the volcano's decided not to be dormant anymore and the over $2 billion that it owed had to be collected, the creditors can go for any council because you're all severally liable for the total amount of the debt. So it's not an and or, it's both. You are joint and severally liable, but if it's only a minor default, there is this side agreement which means you're only liable for, I take it, 0.037%.
Yep, thanks for that. So if taking out the part about the joint and several, if we were limited to 0.37%, do you feel that would be an acceptable risk for us to take?
The risk isn't the 0.37%. The risk is you're giving away democratic governance around this table to an unelected official appointed by the local government funding agency who can come in and veto anything you decide and then impose on you anything that they decide. For example, they decide it'd be in the interest of the creditors to proceed with the Ruatana for water storage scheme.
Thank you. Rick, we don't have any more time left.
Oh, right.
We had 2 questions from Councillor Bailey and...
He's gobbled up all the time.
Yeah. He
Well,
did.
that's him done for the day. No more questions.
Thank you, Fred. I think you have made people think. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Peter, would you like to... Are you ready to present? Thank you very much, Peter.
Good morning,
Yeah,
all.
welcome, Peter. Thanks for your submission. I thought it was very thought-provoking as well. So you have your 5 minutes now. You know the rules, so have read the paper.
I come from with a background of corporate governance, having been managing director of a public company for many years, and having spent considerable time in the public sector as a director of Auckland Regional Holdings, which was the investment company for Auckland City, and as a director of Ports of Auckland. And in addition, I've had many other governance roles in my life. My concern with the proposals that you've had is that I think they lack rigour and discipline that relates to investment. If one is going to invest in something, or ask the public to invest in something, the key factors for me are that, 1, the problem is stated clearly. 2, then having decided that something needs to be done, alternatives have to be canvassed, what are the best ones, and then the reason that a particular approach is taken needs to be set out so that we choose this one as opposed to these. Then the next key thing is that one has to then look at in doing that, at why the current situation has failed and whether throwing money at it is in fact going to cure the problem. If one is going to get through all that process, then the final outcome has to be that what are the changes that I can expect, or the public can expect, from this investment decision that we are making. And if I review the work that was presented in the public papers, I find a very bad intellectual rigour or financial rigour in looking at these approaches. To say that there are some public problems in our community, which there undoubtedly are, and so we will throw little bits of money to a whole range of things and suddenly expect that this is going to cure our problems, that's just fallacious. That if there are specific problems that we want to invest in, we have to say, what are the problems? Will putting some money at it make a difference? What actual difference can we record having made that investment that will be, in fact, a change? And when I look at the proposals, some of which are good, in my opinion, some of which are very faulty, they just lack rigour. That there's no specific outcomes given for most of the problems, and other alternatives or risk management seems to be lacking. If we invest money in this, what is the risk of doing so? Typically would be the Ahuwhenua problem. If we invest money in that, what is the community risk of putting that in? Is it likely to work? Is it not likely to work? Because before money is put in something like that by the whole community, then in fact the risk has to be evaluated. And I find going through the proposals that intellectual rigour and the disciplines of common sense and normal investment procedures is missing from them. So my submission was that a lot more work needs to be done on those, and that they need to be carefully evaluated, and it needs to be shown that the solution that you are offering is in fact the most sensible and viable, rather than just saying we propose to do this. Thank you, that's all I wish to say.
Thank you, Peter. We have time for one question, since it was Ahuwhenua raised.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Peter, quite a bit of your commentary in your general comments is around coastal hazards work. Are you aware that in fact in this long-term plan there is only $100,000 of expenditure proposed, and that is to support our part of running the joint committee of the three councils and to do more detailed work on actual costings for the proposed solutions before they go out to public consultation? So I think we're probably doing what you're urging that we should do.
I'm not sure that I would even be prepared to put $100,000 in. If we said that sea levels are likely to rise, that climatic problems are going to get worse, to me what you're asking would be no different as saying that I have a house on the cliff in Napier and the cliff might go down, so the public should put a whole lot of money into how to stabilise the cliff to protect my investment. That would be no different to what you're asking there. I think you're being very selective for a few individuals, but in fact you could make the same case for many things and you wouldn't put money into those. Why should we specifically choose that one?
Thank you, Peter. It's an interesting perspective. Appreciate your thoughts, but we need to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Stephen Butler. Has Stephen Butler arrived? No. Federated farmers haven't arrived. So you have two other gentlemen. What have you got submissions?
10:05.
10:05.
He's got a big black and white hunt away. Whistle him out.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Do you want to come on now, because we've had a couple of people? You okay to do that? What was your name, sorry?
My name is
Art.
Art Hooper.
Art Hooper.
Mr. Chair, I wonder whether it's worth aggregating submissions that are not being spoken to for consideration in gaps such as this.
They might turn up, that's why.
Well, in their absence, for example, now we could have gone to a batch of submissions that weren't being spoken to and tabled those. Is that that's my recollection of customary practice in the past.
We can do that. That's what you did last time, wasn't it?
Yep.
Let's listen to Art first, shall we?
Yes, Art, welcome. Art, thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming on early. Really appreciate that and appreciate your submission.
Thank you
So-
very much. My name is Art Hooper. I live at 21 Pioneer Place, Variety. In the 40s, I lived in West Shore. I can remember snapper with their tails out of the water digging tuatūas. I can remember playing in the spinifex and sunbathing in the sand and getting sunburnt, I might point out. I remember picking pippies in the Ahuriri lagoon, and I can remember catching flounders over there as well. And where the Onikawa subdivision is, that was one of our play spots, a place we could guarantee to catch eels as kids, and a great place to play and live and to be grown up. There's nothing on the Onikawa industrial area at all when I was living there in the 40s. And Perfume Point was in full production, particularly as the tide flowed out. So my brief is mainly about water, its use, and its misuse. As a fly fisherman, I see much the three rivers over the year that I do my fishing. And I know that gravel extraction is needed to contain the rivers within the stop banks. I'm not against this. It's the methods that need modifying. The extraction in Central Hawke's Bay on the Tukituki and the Waipawa differ greatly from those in the Hawke's Bay Regional Council area. Where digging right up to the main flow seems to be causing a straightening of the channels, shallowing of the streams, the warming of the water, and the loss of deep stretches where fish lie to keep cool in the summer. Central Hawke's Bay Regional Council used to scrape the gravel that they're extracting back well from the river flow. I'm suggesting that perhaps this is what should happen in the Tuki, the Naruroro, and the Tutakuri. I also suggest that because of the problems we've seen at the river, and just last Sunday, a broken up wreck of a car parked, left at the bottom of the Tennant Road access, would perhaps be stopped if we thought again what we should do about dump fees. Perhaps we should eliminate them, or even another suggestion might be to give everybody 2 free passes a year to take their material to the dump rather than see it left on the right-of-ways of the riverbanks. As far as what you're doing with the aquifer, I thoroughly agree with it. It's been over-consented, overused by city, farms, industry and bottlers. In earlier times, this water flowed straight out to sea. It's a time when fish were plentiful. If you remember, I remember snapper with their tails out of the water at West Shore Beach. My question to the marine scientist is, has a reduction in fresh water anything to do with the lack of fish stocks? Further, what is the effect of partly treated sewage on fish stocks? And what might need to be done to reduce the effluent to perhaps 99.99%? Regarding the Ahuriri Lagoon, businesses in the industrial area of Onikawa have to be further encouraged to process surface wastewater so it does not enter the drainage system. And I think all drains and field runoffs along the estuary need to have some filtering system developed. such as growing of plants that absorb heavy metals and fertilisers. It's been well established in Australia that they do this with their sewage systems in the areas that are very, very much in the dry part of the country, and I'd like to see something like this happening here. And the fourth point was to do with forestry. I was particularly concerned when we had the flooding of the Esk and the Mangoni just a few weeks ago, and I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that we're clear cutting right to the bottoms of gullies and right to the edges of streams.
Art, I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt you because we've used your 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I've got one last thing to say, sir.
Yeah.
What I'm doing as a family regarding our behaviour changes, we compost all of our green material. We have added solar to our house. We drive a hybrid car. I've built a successful rodent trap to catch rats and mice around our place. We use cloth bags for our purchases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Art. And I think Councillor's got clearly got your passion in this and these subjects, and you presented it incredibly well. So, despite the fact that I'm sure they had questions, you got through your submission really well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Art. Thank you.
Now, Stephen Butler's still not here. Then we will, now, Councillor Curtin, I'm not sure what you're saying there, but can you explain?
Where do we begin?
Yeah, where do we begin? Where do you want to begin?
Well, Mr Chair, previously we've aggregated submissions that were not being spoken to for consideration, and I wondered whether that is a suitable gap filler between oral submissions.
Do you have a suggestion of which aggregate?
Well, I don't know. I assumed that staff would have undertaken this exercise and batched these accordingly, but...
Fenton, just we'll call on Fenton's experience here. I've never done that before, so
it's
this is a new event.
Probably could happen later in the show, if you like, on the basis that while some people have elected not to be heard, their issues haven't been heard yet by those that do want to be heard, if you know what I'm saying. So we can't make a decision on change to the plan, no change to the plan on those that don't want to be heard until we hear those that do want to be heard.
Yeah.
So that puts a challenge into that theory. But I'm just wondering whether some of the decision items in the agenda maybe could be dealt with. I don't have a firm view on which one, but...
What about the staff submissions?
The what?
Yeah.
For carryover funding of various projects that weren't completed or whatever.
Chair, could I make a comment? What we've modified the process this year, and it's for two reasons. One is we've obviously had a large number of submissions across a number of issues, and so to accommodate the hearings, we've put all of the consideration of the verbal submissions first, and then what we've attempted to do is group submissions by theme alongside your decision papers to ensure that you can work through in a cumulative sense the fiscal impact of all the decisions in one fell swoop, rather than breaking them up and responding to those each verbal submission block. And so it's a slightly different process that we've adopted this year. It could be possible that you deliberate on some of those items, such as the staff submission, during a gap today, although the difficulty with that is you'll break apart the cumulative decision-making plan that we had for Thursday, which is working through the fiscal consequences of all of those. So there was method to the madness, but it's and it is a departure from previous practice, and it just means that it's not really practical to move into those particular items, given that there will be submitters over the next 2 days that will probably still want to speak on some of the items that are yet to be deliberated on. So my advice to you would be to keep your decision making to Thursday after you have heard all the verbal submissions. You have already this morning voted to receive all submissions, so they have all now been formally received. And as you go through each of the decision papers on Thursday, there is a recommendation in each of those papers to consider the relevant submissions.
Mr. Chairman, what you possibly could do is, if there is some spare time, just start at the beginning and flick through those that are not intending to address us. Not to make a decision, but to have some discussion if it's appropriate.
I'm not sure that is, because that's just where you are positioned. Not fair for the people that are at the end. Councillor Curtin, are you happy with that answer from James?
I appreciate the new logic. I'm sure it'll elongate the process, but I'm happy to get it.
And Fenton, what's your thoughts on that?
I think he explained that very well. I don't think we have, the way this has been constructed, I don't think we have much choice in the matter. So.
Now I see it.
Okay, Will, welcome. You're a little bit early, but I'm going to push you on. Are you happy to be a little bit early?
Yeah.
And you're with Jim as well, so welcome you two guys. Now, because you're so esteemed and important, we have allotted you considerably more time, and you represent a very large constituency. So you have 15 minutes. Now, be careful, if you take all the councillors have read your submission, which is very complete, I must say, and if you want to get into questions, then don't use up all your 15 minutes.
So the 15 minutes includes question time, is that correct?
Yes. Thanks, guys. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jim Galloway, from the new president of Federated Farmers, Hawke's Bay, and with me we have Will Foley, the immediate past president of Federated Farmers. I'd like to put apologies in for Ria DeSant, who helped prepare the submission, and Sefton Alexander from the Wairau branch. Today, Federated Farmers would like to speak on perceptions of farming and the future of farming and the high general rates increase. New Zealand sheep and beef farmers have made huge productivity gains over the last 25 years. There are 50% fewer sheep, 23% less cattle, yet the same period we've doubled our export earnings. As a result, significant environmental gains have been made, 21% less nitrate leaching and 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions per kilo of saleable product. Even the amount of land we farm is reduced, encroached by urban encroachment or retiring land. The Our Land 2018 report says that there was a 10% increase in national urban area and from 2002 to 2012, and at the same time 7% reduction in land used for agriculture. Environmental performance of farming has been lifting. Nationally, the land and water Aotearoa analysis shows more sites are improving than deteriorating, with all water river quality parameters monitored over a 10-year period. In Hawke's Bay, farmers have been investing in fencing, erosion control, riparian planting, sediment traps, and providing alternative water sources for their stock. Farmers in the Tutira catchment have been heavily investing in farm plans, fencing to meet water quality rules. Often this runs into thousands of dollars and may increase as you plan to increase the cost of getting consents more onto the consent holder. Federated Farmers calculates a generic fencing cost of about $10 per metre, $10,000 a kilometre, for a 5-wire post and batten fence on easy terrain. Once you get into steeper terrain or more difficult, or 8-wire fences, that cost ramps up rapidly. The consultation document uses words that make it sound like the environment is degrading, and we are doing nothing about it. Talking about waterways being a mess, we need to fix it now that the status quo only leads to continual decline. These are alarmist words that do not reflect the already existing and increasing efforts farmers are putting in. We'll speak on the Future Farming Fund.
Yeah, so one of the aspects of your proposal and long-term plan that we wanted to discuss today was the Future Farming Fund. So Fed Farmers in its submission has expressed uncertainty around this proposal, and we asked for more detail to be provided before the rates are collected. We also raised concerns that this farm aims to, quote, lead on-farm research and innovation. Yet this is something that levy bodies already do, whether it be Beef and Lamb New Zealand or Dairy NZ. Just one look at the Beef and Lamb website provides an abundance of projects for all aspects of the environment, including climate change, biodiversity and water quality. All this information is designed for practical purpose to be taken up on farms to make a difference. And if I could just quote a media release from Beef and Lamb last week. Beef and Lamb launches new environmental strategy and implementation plan. Enhancing our environmental position is one of the key priorities in Beef and Lamb's refresh strategy, which was elevated in response to farmer feedback. And if I could just quote the progressive long-term vision for the sector based around 4 areas: healthy, productive soils, thriving biodiversity, towards carbon neutrality and cleaner water, and I'm sure we're all on the same page with that. The consultation document goes on to say that future farming will focus on providing farmers with information, networks, evidence and tools to improve environmental outcomes. This is already taken care of by the levy bodies. Levy bodies already provide farmers with a wealth of information, access to networks. Evidence is used as the basis of recommendations and practical tools developed for the use on farm. We're concerned that farmers will be paying twice for this, once to the levy bodies and again to the regional council. At best, this will be a duplication. At worst, this could be conflicting information. This is not to say that we don't support the partnerships with council. The biodiversity and pest management partnerships between landowners and council have been working well. These issues link closely to biosecurity and biodiversity functions of a regional council, and the council is well placed to fill this need. However, the way we farm is already covered well by the levy bodies, and there's no gap that needs to be filled by the regional council. However, I would point to the recent release of the Red Meat Partnership action groups. This is a new concept where farmers, groups of around 7 to 9, plus a facilitator getting together with funding of up to $4,000, plus tools and resources available to them to look at specific on-farm research and issues that these groups may want to look at. I suggest that this may be a better way to look at the regional council partnering with farmers and the likes of Beef and Lamb and other organisations to look at specific issues and types of farming that you would like to look into.
The next issue we'd like to discuss is rates increases. The projected rates increase of 19% on average is excessive, we feel. The 90% is also average, meaning that farmers face much higher charges. The consultation document reveals in its examples how much more rural rates will be increasing. Hastings, the farm, will increase by 27%, Central Hawke's Bay 24%, and the Wairau farm by about 17%. Our own personal place is going up by 29% this year. Over the last 2 years, already it's gone up by 49%. These numbers are massive and will have a material impact on us. Will, what are your places doing?
So my farm, Orowara Road, just in behind the Tekapau Freezing Works, 130 hectares, proposed increase in your calculation, 52.9% from this current year to next.
And then you've got the rest of the 10 years, and once you start adding that on, it really compounds up massively. The general rate is the main culprit for these increases. Federated farmers looked at what the general rate was struck at when it came to cents in the dollar for the district differentials over the last few years since the previous long-term plan. The percentage increases have been hitting 3 figures. Hastings has gone up 165%, Central Hawke's Bay 186%, and Wairau 197% since 2015. Page 6 of the financial statements indicates revenue from the land-based general rate is jumping from 1.73 million to 4.25 million, which is a 145% increase. By the end of the 10-year plan, it will be forecasted to be 9.738 million, a 462% increase. Farmers are facing increased operating costs and finding rates are ever increasing, seemingly unproductive cost that funnels away resources from investing in the updating technology for increasing water use efficiency and environmental actions that we're doing on farm. It often feels that farmers can just up the rates when they want extra money, whereas the rest of us only wish we could do it. We therefore expect councils to show financial restraint and stick to its core services. We also expect to see equitable rating policies where ratepayers that benefit from a service contribute to it. Likewise, where they do not benefit from a service, they're not required to fund it. Many of the activities funded by the general rate could be shifted to flat rates such as the governance and community engagement, for example, the Working with Tangata Whenua initiative. They could be fully funded by the UAGC. There is no link between how much your property is worth and how much representation or engagement you receive. We urge a council to keep these UAGCs as close as possible to the 30% allowable, and especially if this plan is supported by a majority of the community should be paying. Thank you.
Any questions? Fenton, and then Debbie.
Thank you. Just in regard to the 19%, 5 point whatever 3 or 4 is civil defence. Now the way this is heading, it looks like it's going to be a net increase to civil defence cost on the basis that the TAs aren't dropping their component of it. Very little evidence that that's happening in this long-term plan. Have you got a view on that?
Hastings has put a civil defence or a defence type rate in theirs. They have reduced it somewhat, but not down to zero like it should be. Whether there's going to be a duplication of function between the councils, so I'm not quite sure where the extra funding will be going.
No, Debbie.
Thanks, guys. Quite a number of people have had their names implicated as being supporters of the Future Farming Fund, and some of these people, when they've found that out, have been quite distressed. So, well, I'm wondering if you can tell us who's been involved in writing your submission, particularly around contributing to the Future Farming Fund opposition.
Yeah, so quite a few people were exposed to some of the early meetings and emails and discussion around this topic. So, and I must say, just in my term as president, probably got more feedback, and particularly from who I'd consider the farming leaders of this region. And so we did specifically go back out to those people in writing the submission, and outside of the Hawke's Bay Executive, that included James Hunter, Bruce Wills, Steve Wynne-Harris, Mike Peterson and Sam Robinson.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you, Chair. You've made comment about you kept on harping on about the percentage increase for particular properties around that happen. First of all, you acknowledge that all your rates payments are tax deductible for your businesses, right? Whereas they're not for the urban dwellers who the pensioners that we have in the community, right? Could you say, looking at the Central Hawke's Bay from your sheet that you handed out this morning, there's a $318 increase on a property with a capital value of $2 million. I find that an extremely small number compared to the value of the property. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, I guess if you're just looking at that one single rate increase, on its own, but it's one of many expenses. I mean, we're already expected, if we look at CHP farms in the Tukatuk plan area with Plan Change 6 and the costs around, farm environmental plans, and then the action, as a result of those around fencing and fencing off waterways. I mean, some of the big ones will be land use changes where farmers just simply can't comply with what they're currently doing particularly around nitrogen leaching. I mean, we're looking at some, massive effects on both operating income and potential balance sheet effects.
Would it be fair to say that that a lot of the proposed increase that we're looking at doing is actually going to go back into the farming community to assist them to deal with those challenges?
Yeah, but is it a case of double dipping? Because, as I said, those farms are already doing a lot of that work themselves on their own farms, and I'd like to think that we are still early days in that, yet we're seeing the reports like the Lawa report that came out a few weeks ago, which give us hope that, we can influence and have effect perhaps a lot quicker than initially thought.
Sorry, you can be quick and then Peter.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just in terms of your submission around uniform annual general charge and the desire to, if you like, more equitably spread the load, would you agree then to a reduction in the general rate for expenditure of the general rate on possum and rabbit control as to reflect the balance between contributors and benefits?
Yeah, so short answer, no. So we're simply saying to spend more of that through the general rate, the uniform rate than the general. So things like pest control is perhaps once considered, specific benefit to farmers, whereas now the wider community has seen the benefits to biodiversity, and so we would class things like rabbit and pest control as very much a wider community benefit as much as farmers.
Peter.
Yeah, you made some opening comments about farmer responsibility and the fencing and all the rest of it and spending money on farm environmental management plans, but the fact is for Plan Change 6, of the 1,100 plans that we should have expected to have received by now, we've only received 300. So I'm wondering how you bridge the gap between what farmers are supposed to have done and what they've actually done.
Yeah, so I don't think it's been a helpful situation with the lead up with Plan Change 6 and the Ruataniwha Dam, and I've seen a lot of confusion around the linkages between those two and what's expected of farmers. The way I understand it is there is a lot of work going on now around those farm environmental plans, particularly with the larger commercial farmers, and it seems to be the smaller holdings, so larger than lifestyle, but say less than 40 hectares, that they're still struggling to get across the line. And I know there's a lot of work going on concentrating on that group of people now.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for that answer, and thank you, councillors. No, that was a really it was a good submission, guys, and for a short period of time that you had, you did extremely well. So thank you very much. Okay, we have to move on.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Sorry that time is just as tight as it is. We need to spend a couple of hours with you sometime. Okay, Bruce and Gillian Wilton. Thank you very much. Thank you, team. Your submission was very brief, but very to the point.
It's
So-
us, brief and to the point.
and quite radical, if I may say so. So now,
Thank you.
you know
Thank
the.
you for Good morning
Yes,
to
thank you.
everybody,
Now, if-
Chairman.
Yes, before we kick the time up, you have 5 minutes only, and so we're so tight. And
Very short, it's
yes,
fine.
and if you want questions from councillors, which I'm sure you do, because they've all read your thing, then don't take up too much of your 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name's...
You've got 10 minutes, so it looks. I've
Oh,
just
have
been
I?
told. My God, yes.
Well, we won't need it. My name is Gillian Wilton, and I'm speaking on behalf of my husband and I, but also on behalf of Seascape Environment Society, who inadvertently ticked the wrong box to say that they wouldn't speak. But since I'm usually their spokesperson, I have just included it.
Oh,
We
so
have
you're
this-
two, yes, you're speaking
Yes,
to two.
yes, both in one. Right, well, I hope you all watched that wonderful wedding at the weekend of Harry and Meghan, because then you'll know that what I'm about to say is, it's all about love. Love of a city, and this city is Napier. And we are all the city's children. And in this, we all deserve to be heard with an open mind about the direction of our city. We need to look further than a 10-year plan. In fact, we really need to look at a 50 to 100-year plan for this city and its traffic problems. So in respect of the city and the direction of the traffic, We realise that the Port of Napier is the most wonderful asset and we love the jobs it creates and the profits it brings in. But if it continues to grow the way that it is, then the port placement is in the wrong place for the city. It now infringes on the health and well-being of a huge amount of residential areas by way of traffic, trucks and port noise. The only way to arrive at this destination is through many residential streets, and the non-stop noise is horrendous. So what happens to Ahuriri, Napier South, Te Awa, Marine Parade, if this continues to grow? So now's the time for the Regional Council to look at the port from a very long-term way. And this really means getting the port out of the city and towards somewhere like perhaps Ahuwhenua, where the traffic won't impinge on the residential area. So instead of yet another berth to create more noise, pollution and traffic, it's time to look forward and make the first move to an alternative area. Now it's going to take a very strong council to start the process, but this council, I think, have got the guts to do it. We don't think you're going to come back to us and say, hey, Jill, what a great suggestion. We're going to move the port. Hallelujah. But you may just start to give it a little bit of serious thought for the future of Napier. Now, the other three suggestions in our submission. We would request support to keep the flat, maintained smooth seal along the residential area of Breakwater Road. They take all of the traffic into the port, no matter where it's coming from. This reduces traffic noise and it reduces air pollution. We also would like support in extending the courtesy speed reduction, similar to the Marine Parade. We'd like this to be from Coot Road right round to the bypass. It would mean less noise, less pollution, and less risk of pedestrian injury. This is not an easy thing we understand to do, but if it can be done along the Marine Parade, it can obviously be extended. And we're just asking for support to go with the port and with the council in doing this. Now, an air pollution monitor. We would like to request that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council install an air quality monitor in the vicinity of Breakwater Road as an indication to the group of dwellings in that area and report back to them, perhaps weekly, perhaps monthly. We have extreme black particles build up on the front of the buildings. Well, Bruce wrote that bit. He doesn't do the inside cleaning, and I tell you the dirty particles are on the inside all the time too. You can wipe your fingers along anywhere, and black, thick particles, which means that we are all breathing in this really bad thing for our health. Anyway, that's quick. That's it. Thank you very much for your consideration, and thank you for allowing us to speak.
Questions, Councillor? Thank you very much. Rick, do you have another question?
Question to you. Have you spoken with the Napier City Council and the Hastings District Council with your suggestion that the Port of Napier be moved to Hastings?
Oh, you have got to be joking.
And secondly, if you're going to move the Port of Napier to Hastings, have you suggested that they also move the airport back to Hastings as well?
Sarcasm is a wonderful thing.
No, seriously.
No, we would not suggest that they move it to Hastings. The Napier City Council would be absolutely up in arms if we suggested anything like that. We are thinking more of a place. We are all one place after all. We are all Hawke's Bay, are we not?
We are certainly. Councillor, you can keep your sarcasm.
It wasn't sarcastic. It was, I have no offence to that.
We'll move on. We'll move on.
I'm not going to accept that. It was not sarcastic. Friendly jibe.
Well, perhaps I could say that I could agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian and Bruce. Now, did you, these 3 points relating to the road and speed and so on, did you by chance make submission to the review of the transport plan?
We have.
You have? Thank you.
Transport plan? No.
Sorry,
We've done the city council and
No,
port.
we-
Oh, I'm wrong.
Okay,
Sorry, I answered most of the technical stuff. I don't want to rubbish the city council because they haven't got a representative here. But on a scale of 10, we've always got 0 from the Napier City Council.
Well, sorry, I'm talking about the
Road.
regional council's transport plan.
Not
No.
yet, I thought you were asking the city council.
That's not what-
10-year
Regional
plan.
council.
Just the regional. 10-year plan, that's what this is, isn't it, the regional?
No, the transport plan is separate, but.
Oh, we
look-
have, sorry, no, we haven't. done
Okay,
it.
well, I'll make a point of bringing it to that
Thank you
committee's
very much,
attention.
Ellen. Yes.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you for your submission. I appreciate the challenges that you have, especially with the sooty stuff. That's the diesel. Anyway, what would your feelings be if I know that there's still the Parkawhai Road roundabout, which is going to be driving traffic in a different direction, but it's all still going to come through that Breakwater Road and through the bypass there. But how would you feel about if we tried to encourage as much as possible freight to be going by rail rather than by road?
Well, we don't have a problem with rail. Rail does, but it does have quite a few places to go through, holding up traffic on the road to get there. But we're very positive about rail. Rail is a noise you can live with. It has a lot less pollution. We already have trains go through 3-4 times a night. And we will deal with the squealing of the train brakes with the railway itself personally, so that will be not your problem, that's our problem when they do that. They've got too many loads on. But yes, rail is the answer to a lot of the trucks coming off the road.
Thank you.
Probably won't please the truckies though, so I don't think you can please everybody.
If I could add to that, some of those trains that go through, firstly they go slow. If you're going slow, you transmit a lot less noise. A truck will go thundering past with a trailer on, maybe equivalent to about maybe 2 carriages of trains. That truck would make 10 times the noise of what a train, and some of these trains go through, I've only got 10 fingers, but I'd suspect they've got 50 carriages behind them. They go through at about 5 kilometres an hour. They go through at night time, they might wake you up, but you go back to sleep. The trains, in my opinion, per load would make less than 1% of the noise of what one truck would make. That's my opinion.
Tom?
You gave a low rating to the Napier City Council in terms of your engagement with them. We're the owners of the port. How would you rate the port's citizenship, if you will, on issues that you care about?
I didn't catch that.
Okay.
They haven't made their mind up yet.
Look, in recent, let's start again. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council, let's go right back to when the port applied for its extensions and that. They represented the things fairly well. They actually wanted to have a representative from the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to be on the Port Noise Liaison Committee. This committee has been going for, I'd say, about 8 years. It is only in the last year that the Regional Council ever bothered to have anybody turn up there, and thank you, Liz, for coming to those last 2 meetings. But also Liz attended the Environmental Court mediation, when we were in mediation for about a year. What we found was, in my opinion, and some others, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council wanted to look the other way and didn't want to know about it. However, in more recent year or two, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council's attitude changed phenomenally, and they formed a 3-person committee, of which I think Alan was on, and we've had some success from that, and the port have started to meet the Napier City District Plan. Of course, now that the port have applied to extend the port, all of a sudden they're starting right now not to just meet their requirements under the district plan, but they're exceeding the requirements under the district plan. But having said that, for 8 years they did nothing.
Thank you very much.
Time?
We really, yes, we were over time, and you had extended time too, so thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and I think some really good comments and some thoughts came out from councillors here today. So you have been heard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henare, my friend. You're on, mate. Yes, you are. You're a little bit late, but you're on now.
What do I do with this stuff?
You're up here.
Tu ake au ki te mihi ki a koe, Henare ko tai mai ki runga i te ata nei, no reira, piki mai ka ke mai. I taku mohi o tō mahi i Tutira, tātara kina, ka nui te whakamiharu, no reira, piki mai, ka ke mai, tēnā anō koe.
Tēnā koe, Mike, korua Rex, no reira, tēnā koe te katoa.
Thank you very much, No. So you have, we already had a lot of submitted, so you've got 10 minutes, you've got an extended time because you're so important.
Yeah, you might have some stuff I've written there, but
and everyone will have read your submission, so
but I've got added stuff here
okay.
that might be better because you can see maps and all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so you've got 10 minutes, and if you want questions, you've got to keep it within that time frame.
Okay.
To be fair to everybody else.
Yep.
Even though we need to spend a couple of days with you, mate. Floor is yours.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a couple of blocks at Ayala Hawke's Bay. It'll give you an idea of what we're doing. Okay, our first one is Onuku. It's on State Highway 38 to Rotorua. It's 2,430.615 hectares. We farm 1,542 hectares, 135 hectares in pine forest, and the rest is in native forest. We have retired 605 hectares from the farm, so that the runoff doesn't go into the Lake Rotomahana, which is the lake right next to us, which is our lake, and Rere Whakaitu. So we have 3 dairy units, and the amount of land we've retired is more than our 3 dairy units use. So that's what we do to eliminate nutrients running off into the lakes. And that's a lot. That's like I said, 3 times the amount of land, same amount of land as we use for dairy. We have 3 dairy units on it. We think planting a riparian strip around the waterways is a dumb idea because it doesn't stop the pollution from entering into the waterways. It's just window dressing. For us, removing 740 hectares in the most vulnerable part of the farm addresses this problem. There has been no extra maintenance cost to our operations. We just leave it alone to nature. She knows best. We also are buying farms up further away from the lakes and the streams of our latest acquisition on the south side of State Highway 38, which I have a map here, and you can see what the area is and where the road is. The next block out of the district is Ahuwhenua. This is 1,595 hectares. All of this land is in trees, no stock on it. We have a very vibrant native birds, insects and fish on the block. And like I said, we farm trees. That's our farming business, trees. So there's 1,500 hectares up there. We leave the rest to nature, like 1,074 is in Pinus radiata, 7 hectares in Delega's fir, and the balance is in native. This ensures that the rangataiki, the whiao, the whirinaki, and many other tributaries that feed them through is free of pollution. Now, getting closer to home, and Mike would know about this block, and this is Tatarakina, which is just up on the State Highway 5 in the northern Hawke's Bay. It's 2,187 hectares. In the 1950s, the Māori trustee and Lyons survey on our behalf ran a 1,200-acre sheep and beef unit. This came to an end when Bowler took out our access bridge. And by January 2008, I had sold off the last of the cattle as my role as the block supervisor on the trust. We replaced those trustees, and since then we have put in a sole trustee to run the block. So again, we've gone from a 1,200-acre sheep and beef farm to farming trees. That's all we do there. And that helps the rivers that are in there, like the Tahoi, the Mokomoko Nui, Waipunga, Matakuiha, or Tawhiri in the Mohaka River. However, our neighbours around us are not doing the same thing. I mean, they're farming, and they're farming close to the rivers. And it's sort of a bit of disheartening that we're doing all this work, and then there's our neighbours just crapping in the water right next door. So that was in 1999 we closed that up. We put our first 10,000 hectares into a ngā whenua rahi. Tubi is just down by the marae. That's 144 hectares. I'm the sole trustee on that block. We've finally locked the whole place up. And I'm farming native trees. So it's all gone back into regeneration, manuka, and everything else. At the moment, I'm looking at, well, I have been farming bees. They are low impact on our lands and our waterways. And if you look at my photograph off the block here, red is 2B. Over here is what's left of a logging operation from our neighbours over here. And over here is our other neighbours, that's Tarawera Farm. So look at us in the middle. Look at our neighbours, what they're doing. They're just clearing the land, and there are streams in here. That's why we've closed it off. However, our neighbours are doing what they're doing. We're trying to keep it clean, and their crap is coming over to us. Yeah, Lake Tutira, 2B, B7 and B19. I've just talked about a whole lot of land that we've just concentrated and quite easily put into forest and, you know, address some of the nutrients in our farming operations. Tutira is a whole different story. It's only, it's under 17 hectares, and yet we can't get any traction to clean it up. Why? Because everybody else has got their finger in the pie. Everybody. I would have thought this would have been the easiest one for us. I mean, in the last 68 years, there's been many scientists that are converged on the lakes and do studies on everything from noxious weeds, hydrilla, nutrient enrichment, bad farming practices, destruction of our wetlands, the use of herbicide endothol, grass carp, and all that stuff. They've been there for over 60 years doing this stuff. And look at the lake. And again, we can't control our neighbours. They are the problem. And yet we're being asked to increase suck it up and pay extra in our rates to rectify what they've done. And I'm really not happy about that. And it probably reflects on my actions when I deal with people. In the past, I must say, I never had a very good relationship with Hawke's Bay Regional Council, but I've got to say I talk direct a lot now. New broom, and I think it's good. So a lot of my Ahuwhenua is prior to this council coming in. We could have addressed Lake Tutira 10 years ago. Been easy for me, you know, to address 14,000 hectares. Can't even do 16. But I never had the problems dealing with the same people at Tutira as I did. I didn't have to deal with the upper Tatakina because we had control. And that is one of the problems. Every man and his dog wants to control us. I think everybody wants to have a feather in their cap, so when everybody drives past, look at that nice lake. I did that. That's not what we're after. We just want to clean it up. We have solutions. We should, we're saying, identify and prosecute all the polluters. We know who they are. Charge all the current polluters on a paper, on a per stock unit basis to replace it. Place a 10-year rahui over the lakes, and that's what it's taken us to clean up what we've already done. Tātakina, at least 1999, way over 10 years. And look at it now. Now the public can go and enjoy it now because it's clean. Remove all exotic fauna and flora from the waterway and replace them with natives. There's been no native survey in Lake Tutira ever. Haven't found one. Tried to. Dock doesn't have one. Hawke's Bay Fish and Game doesn't have one. All these people who got their finger in the pie don't have one. So we started our own. 10 hinaki in the lake, 174 hectare lake, 25 eels. I don't have to be a scientist to figure that out. When I was a kid, we were throwing back 25 eels. Now work that out, 10 hinaki in a 175 hectare lake, and you only catch 25 eels overnight. You don't need to be a scientist. Collect all the scientific data that has been collected over 65 years, plus disseminate them out to all the stakeholders so we all can read from the same page. I was up there in 2006 when Niwa was doing core sampling at a rig on there, and because of my interest on the land, I went to talk to the people about what they were doing. And I identified, I was amazed, the eruption at Tarawera. They said, oh, there it is there. See that bit of dirt there on that core sample? That's Tarawera. Oh, is that right? Can you tell me what happened in the 1960s? Oh, there it is there. So we have all that information here since 2006. Who's hiding it? You know, and I'm listening to all this crap in the paper. About the scientists are saying this and the scientists are saying that. You know, all this rubbish when we already got it.
Thank you. No, that was excellent. I'm sorry that we had such tight time, but
Can I
catching
ask
up.
one
No, you can't. Sorry.
Okay.
Because we're going to run out of time, and I'm going to catch you up next week and go through some of this. Thank you, Mike. Are you going to?
Oh, I'm not able to make a statement, so I'll put it into a question.
No, you won't.
Do you realise how much Māori admire what you've done with Tatrakina, 12,000 hectares, covenanted into native forest, and you're the example for Māori in Ahuwhenua. Kia ora.
That's a good statement. Kia ora, Henare. I'll see you next week, mate.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You.
It's an extremely important project for us.
Am I able to listen into?
Yeah, sure, sure. Now, we have an equally esteemed kaumatua, Mr. McIntyre. Right, mate. Now, how much time have we allotted for?
An hour.
He'll need an hour.
I got the message.
You got the
It's
message?
10 minutes now. It
10
was
minutes?
5. And I was complaining about that.
So, you're not complaining, are you, Rex?
Of course.
Okay, so you know the rule. Everyone's read your thing. You know the rules. If you talk, you won't get any questions. I'm sure you want to hear what councillor's got to say. Right, bang, you're on.
Thank you, sir. The long-term rate, in my opinion, is rather excessive. It lacks restraint and reasonableness. It is taking extreme course of action that reflects his council's one-eyed view and not a balanced view. The plan and the rate rise does not reflect the very large sums of money invested in environmental soil conservation over the last 40-odd years, largely by farmers, and I am one of these, and also a councillor and a catchment board member who's worked on it for 30 years. And I want you to acknowledge that. There's been a lot of work done. Don't think you're inventing the wheel. You're not. The rate rise puts into question the ability to pay for this reducing the amount and continuing the work that they're currently doing. I'm talking about the farmers. Let me put my own case. Since 1968, I have been planting somewhere between 150 and 200 poplar and willow poles per year. At 150 a year, take it down a bit, that's 7,500 poles. That's significant. I just look at 2 creeks that come out of my place, and they've gone down because there's no soil going out of it now, because of the work that I have done, about twice the depth of this room. That's the gut they've scoured out. And if that's not significant, what is? I live on a hill looking out over the lower Nuhaka catchment, and every farmer in that area over the years have done soil conservation work and have retired areas into QE2 trusts, like myself, 2 areas. I have 2 areas of native bush which I've fenced off and retained myself. And I have planted overall 52 hectares in pine trees to stop an erosion flow, earth flow, huge one. 2.5 kilometres deep, 2 kilometres wide. We can't get the authorities, you included, to do much about it. I have planted pine trees, but there's a lot of multiple owned land, and that's, I'm saying, Maryland, and they haven't got the finances to do it. It is the main contributor to soil and everything else into the Nuhaka River. You've considered that unswimmable this year. You have forgotten to take into account the water that flows out of the Maori pools system and out of the spring there, that since when I was a little kid was known to affect the quality of the river. So you want to do your work a bit more carefully. So I want to spend some more, there's one other point I want to make. I pay significant rates for environmental work that was introduced in the past. And one of the ones that are really successful is the elimination of possums. That's bloody brilliant. But it still costs me, my possum rate through Regional Council, it still costs me somewhere every year for a contractor to come in between $1,400 and $2,000 a year to do the bait stations. But it's brilliant. I can say that I've only seen one very fat possum on my place since that program started. And that's significant. I don't want to lose that. So what I'm really saying is, if you charge too much for those who are doing the work now and done it voluntary, you're going to cut them out. There's only so much money in the bucket a farmer has, and I've found that as I get older and farming gets more intensive, and you get more variances in your income for various reasons, it's bloody hard to make a thing. I see my red light is, have I gone 10 minutes?
No, that's
you
just
haven't.
an
You're
automatic
fine. For your microphone.
You're fine. We're just trying to freak you out, Rex.
Oh, I bet you are. Finally, I want to talk about those, and I hear a lot about them and heard about them in my district, and phone calls from down here, who their income has not increased. A number of pensioners, a number of people who are looking for houses, just cannot afford to do anything now. They've got no huge increase in money given back to them, and yet you're asking a big slice of it. I'm saying pretty clearly that what you should do is carry on encouraging those who can and looking at those who can't. And I said probably 30 years ago, it's going to take generations to change. And if this farmer or this person doesn't change in their time, hopefully the next generation will. It's taken generations to deteriorate. Don't fix it overnight. And I just asked you to consider what created the Gisborne Plains, the Nuuka Flats, Whakakī Flats, and I had a lot to do with Whakakī, right on down to the Heratonga Flats. What created that? Erosion, etc., at a time when it was all a native bush. So go back a bit and don't just blame the current generations. Now I'm going to ask for questions, so you haven't shot to shoot at me.
Right, questions for Rex. I have one. I just noticed, Rex, you said you were very disappointed that Ruataniwha water storage scheme never went ahead.
Yes, I am. Extremely disappointed.
Is that because you were ex-chairman or because you thought some water was going to drift into the Wairau area?
No, I didn't. I didn't think Wairau gained anything at all, but we were looking at that time what our investment would be best for total Hawke's Bay. And my memory serves me, I think correctly, we had two reports done, one by a New Zealand firm and one by an overseas firm. And they said to us that the best investment you can make for the whole area is utilise your assets of your area. And that's climate, soil and water. In certain areas, water is short. And I did a process of going around both Heratonga Plains area and the Central Hawke's Bay consulting. I went and had a meeting at the Havelock North Community Centre. It was half attended. And they didn't want anyone to have water. They didn't want water looked at and volumes charged for. And I go back into my catchment board days when Doug Walker was chairman, and before that Eric Batson, and the Heratonga Plains people, and the Twyford people in particular at the time, refused to give analysis of the volume of water they used annually and etc. And you know the reason they gave? Because you will charge us if we give that information. And they didn't do it until after I resigned from Regional Council and the central government made everyone in New Zealand provide that information. I go back to the Havelock North Community Centre. It was only about half full, and that was the argument. I went to the Ongonga Golf Club and talked to them, and they said, yes, we want it. And there was a different version that eventually came out. But the fact is that that would change the economy. Also in these reports, one report said it would add somewhere between $250 million to the income of Hawke's Bay in different land use. And that envisaged at that time, because it was before the height of the dairying, that it would be grapes, horticulture, and other things. And most of the processing would be done in Hastings. Does that answer your question?
It's a long answer. It took up all the other potential questions, Rex. But never mind. Thank you very much.
I think it was very important, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I know. We always look forward to having you here, and we always look forward to seeing you in Wairau at our meetings. And we would miss you dearly if you didn't turn up. And I just want to say that I do think you're doing a great job on your farm.
Thank you.
I went up there and had a look, and your farm stands out like a little diamond there. So, well done.
But so is everyone else in the district. That's
But
what
yeah, they do too. Thank you. Now, thanks,
Chairman.
Rex. Now, Sue, you're on. Thank you very much. Now, Sue, as you're coming up, I'll explain, because you have 5 minutes, because we have a lot of people, so we're very sorry that our time is so short for everyone. So
I have to say that I've got a very loud voice, so you don't mind if I stand?
No, we'd love you to
and
stand.
I'm very short, and I feel like I'm at the same level anyway.
No. So you've got, if you want questions from councillors, you've got to keep your, because they've all read your paper. Remember that.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
this is Isabel Morgan is our chairperson, and she wanted to be here today to present this.
Okay.
But she's had an urgent family
The floor is
issue.
yours.
But I will speak to you. I am deaf, so I need to look at you if I'm speaking to you if you ask me a question.
Okay.
But if I can just go on with what I need to say, and hopefully I'll get through
We
it
can
all.
certainly hear you. Don't worry about that. Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
as I said, I've got a
We'll
loud
start
voice,
now.
so I don't
Okay.
need a microphone.
Thanks, Sue.
My name is Sue MacDonald. I'm the Secretary of the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society, and I'm here today just to give you a little bit of encouragement from our society about, we know it's just a small part of the responsibilities you have, the whole of Hawke's Bay, but we believe the Ahuriri Estuary is an indictment of how we've allowed our environment to struggle in the society that we have today. The estuary, we believe, is an area of natural significance. It's a nursery. It's important to our environment to look after it, but it's also a cesspool of the community not taking enough care of our environment, and it's now turning around to bite us in the bum. And I excuse that word, but I'm taking the fact that sometimes we just have to speak our mind, and we have to say it forcefully, because we've been doing the hui. It's time for the doui. And so we encourage and congratulate the Hawke's Bay Regional Council for acknowledging that it's time to get back to your core business, and it's the environment. We don't want you as a group of people to come down heavily on the people that are not doing the right thing. We encourage you to work with them. We encourage them to lead the way. We encourage you to stand up for the environment, because the environment, if we don't have a good clean environment, if we don't have clean water, we haven't got those other things that we are now proposing to have, tourism or anything like that, because our environment can't sustain us taking and not giving. None of us want to have huge rate rises, but the society acknowledges that we have to have a start. You had a 10% increase in the pollution hotspots last year. You're proposing about a 17%. I know you haven't taken this decision lightly, but we believe that the money that you collect on the behalf of the community needs to go back to the environment. I know other groups will come here and encourage you to say, well, their issue is important. I do acknowledge that. But the estuary, as I said, is a picture to what we do if we don't look after our environment. Just on a personal note, I was 7 months pregnant when the society was formed, and I became its secretary. In that time, our group has spent thousands of hours coming to meetings like this, encouraging the authorities to take more care, encouraging the community to take more care. She's 35 next month. And here we are. We're here again, encouraging you as a council to take more care of the Ahuriri estuary. We acknowledge that you are working with the Napier City Council about stormwater discharges. We know and acknowledge that the Napier City Council are encouraging groups like us to help. But we've always been there. We've always been there to support and help. And it's disappointing to find we're coming to this stage now where we have to increase the rates by a lot to fix a pollution hotspot like the Ahuriri estuary. It deserves better. We're not going to beg you to make this better, but we are going to encourage you, and we will support you, and we will do what we can as a society to work on this issue. But as the regulatory body at the moment, we encourage you very, very strongly to encourage the Napier City Council to stop the talk, to stop the... I've been at meetings where the council have said to me, we're looking at it. 35 years we've been looking at it.
Thank you,
The
Sue.
time is now. The time is to really walk the walk and not do the talk. Because the
Thank you, Sue.
estuary is
You won't get any disagreement
who
around
know
this
the
table.
problems.
Neil, would
do
you
it.
like to make a quick statement?
Oh, just a quick comment. Thank you for coming, Sue. We admire your passion and dedication and commitment over a long period of time. Can you pass on our regards to Isabel and wish her well?
Yes.
Look, I think we're out of time, I think, Mr. Chair, on this issue, but thank you for coming.
Yes.
Will you come back next year again, please?
Well, let's put it this way. I might be like Israel, over 90 years of age and still here and talking the talk. But we hope not. We hope that we can retire. Our society was only ever set up for the immediate problem at the time, and we always look forward. It's done. The estuary's got the recognition, it's got the protection, and we can just disband and enjoy it for what it is. It's disappointing.
You've done a
that's
great
not
job,
happened.
hugely great job, and we all really appreciate it, and we're with you. We're going to fix
Well,
this.
we do know that, we do, but we wish half the work we didn't do in the estuary we didn't have to do. I mean, 30 years of doing clean-ups.
Yeah.
The time has
You have
come
done
that we need to, as a community, need to know that the estuary is a treasure, and everybody's responsible for making sure that it's a treasure for our children and their
Yeah.
children.
Thank you very much.
So thank
Now,
you.
we really appreciate your presentation. Now we'll stop for a cup of tea.
Mr. Chair, before you do, I just wonder whether I could make a point around attending to people with a hearing impairment, for example, that whether that could be known prior to. At least we encourage speakers to come forward who have a disability. I don't know if we've attended to that.
Good
in our
point, Neil.
submission.
We're going to stop for a cup, and our visitors are welcome to have a cup of tea with us, but we're going to make it 10 minutes instead of 15. Even the union stepping in again.
No.
Bring your
poor chairmanship. Close the meeting, then you took more comments afterwards.